My fiancé uploaded a countdown to our wedding while secretly planning something else behind my back. I stayed silent until I posted the truth first. The wedding didn't get canceled, it got exposed. He already said yes to everything I asked. He has no idea what's actually happening after the ceremony. I heard that sentence through a half-open bathroom door. She didn't know I was standing in the hallway. She thought I was downstairs watching the game. I wasn't. There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't feel like quiet. It feels like the floor dropping out from under you. That was the silence I stood in, completely still, back pressed against the wall, listening to the woman I was going to marry in 43 days describe me to someone on the other end of the phone like I was a prop in her plan. Not a person, not her partner. A prop. I didn't walk in. I didn't say a word. I stood there until she laughed, actually laughed, and then I walked back downstairs like nothing had happened. That night, I made a decision. And by the time this story ends, you'll understand exactly why staying silent was the most powerful thing I ever did. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. I was 29. She was 27. We'd been together for 3 years, engaged for 8 months. Her name is Claire. We lived together in a 2-bedroom apartment in the Pacific Northwest, the kind of city where it rains 9 months out of 12 and people still act like it doesn't bother them. We met at a mutual friend's birthday dinner. She laughed at something I said before I even finished saying it, and I thought that was the most attractive thing I'd ever seen someone do. 3 years later, I was buying a ring. That's the short version of how we got here. Now here's the part that matters. Claire had started a wedding countdown series on her social media about 2 months before that night in the hallway. Short videos, 40, 50 seconds each. Her voice soft and excited, posting little updates. The venue, the flowers, the invitation cards fanned out on the kitchen table. She'd hold them up to the camera and do this little shimmy. 14,000 followers watching her become a bride in real time. Comments like, "You two are goals," and "Can't wait to see the dress," and "He is so lucky." I watched every single one. Not because she asked me to, because I genuinely thought, for a long time, that I was lucky. She'd post them at night, usually around 9 or 10, always with this specific caption format. Day 43 until I marry my person. Day 39 and the flowers are officially decided. Day 31 and I still can't stop smiling. The comments piled up fast. Family members I'd never met were tagging each other. Her aunts were reposting. Her college friends were crying in the comment section. And I'd sit there on the couch next to her while she edited the videos, and she'd show me the engagement metrics, and I'd nod and tell her it looked great. I meant it every time. Right up until the night, everything shattered. The phone call in the hallway happened on a Tuesday. Regular Tuesday. She had made pasta for dinner. I had washed the dishes. We talked about whether we needed more chairs for the reception or if the venue's chairs were fine. Normal. Completely normal. Then she said she was going to take a shower, and I figured I'd watch the second half of the match I'd recorded. I don't know why I went upstairs. I think I was going to ask her something about the catering deposit. I genuinely do not remember what I needed in that moment. But I stopped at the top of the stairs because I heard her voice, and it wasn't the shower singing voice or the on the phone with her mom voice. It was lower, careful, like someone speaking at a controlled volume on purpose. I didn't hear the beginning of the conversation. I caught it mid-sentence. He handles everything I ask him to without ever questioning it. I mean, he's already paid the venue deposit in full. His parents transferred their contribution last week. My side of the family has been sending gifts for a month. A pause. Then laughter. Quiet laughter. The kind you do when something isn't actually funny, but you want to signal to the other person that you're being casual about something serious. Victor, I told you. After the ceremony, everything changes. Just be patient. Victor, I want you to sit with that name for a second. Victor. Because I knew exactly who Victor was. He wasn't a coworker. He wasn't an old friend she'd mentioned in passing. Victor was her ex-boyfriend. The one she told me she hadn't spoken to in 2 years. The one whose name she said with such confidence when I asked once, early in our relationship, if there was anyone she was still in contact with from her past. No. Victor and I ended badly. I have zero interest in revisiting that. Zero interest. That's the phrase she used. I remember it specifically because of how deliberate it sounded. Zero. Not really, or not much. Zero. I walked back downstairs. I sat down on the couch. The game was still going. I don't know who scored. I don't know what quarter it was. I was sitting there looking at the TV and not watching a single frame of it. My brain was doing something else entirely. It was going back through the past 8 months and fast forward, looking for things I'd missed. And here's the thing about hindsight. It's not a gift. It's a punishment. Because when you start looking for things you missed, you find them. You find all of them. The weekend trip she took with Tessa back in March. Tessa, her best friend since college, who I actually like, but who I now realized had been unusually quiet around me for the past 2 months. Not cold, just quiet. The way someone is quiet when they know something and have decided it isn't their place to say it. The time Claire got a phone call during our engagement dinner at her parents' house, our first dinner there after the ring, and stepped outside for 15 minutes. She came back and said it was a work thing. The phone call in November where I walked past the guest room and heard her say, "Don't text me during the day, I'll call you at night." I thought nothing of it. I genuinely thought nothing of it. She worked in marketing. She had clients. She had deadlines. I wasn't suspicious because I didn't have a reason to be suspicious, or so I'd been telling myself. She came downstairs about 40 minutes later, hair damp, in her pajamas, and asked if I wanted tea. "Sure," I said. She made 2 cups. She sat next to me on the couch. She smelled like the shampoo she always used, the one with the green cap that I'd bought for her by mistake once, and she ended up loving. She tucked her feet under her and leaned into my side the way she always did when we watched TV. And I sat there, completely still, letting her lean against me, not moving away, not stiffening up, just sitting there like a man who had heard nothing at all. She showed me a comment on her latest countdown video from someone who'd seen us at the venue during the walkthrough. "Look, this lady said we were cute," she said. I looked at the comment. I smiled. "That's nice," I said, and I hated myself a little for how easy it was to perform that. But I also knew, in some part of me that was already thinking 3 steps ahead, that now was not the time. Not yet. I didn't realize it then. But that moment, me sitting still, saying nothing, choosing to wait, that moment changed everything that came after. The next morning, I called my best friend Owen. Owen has known me since we were 11 years old. He is the kind of person who doesn't panic, doesn't overreact, and doesn't tell you what you want to hear. He tells you what's true. I told him everything I'd heard, word for word, on a walk outside, so I didn't have to lower my voice inside my own apartment. There was a long pause on his end when I finished. "Do you want me to tell you you're misreading it?" he asked. "No." "Good. Because I don't think you are. So what do I do?" "Nothing yet," he said. "Don't confront her. Don't let on that you know anything. Find out what you're actually dealing with before you move." He said it the way people say things when they've already thought about it from multiple angles before opening their mouth. "And if she's actually planning to leave after the wedding?" I asked. "Then you need to know that clearly before you do anything at all. Right now you have a fragment of a conversation. Fragments can be explained away. You need the full picture." I wrote that down when I got home. Literally wrote it down on a sticky note. Don't confront yet. Find out what you're actually dealing with first. I stuck it inside the front cover of a book on my nightstand, on my side, where she would never look. I started paying attention differently after that. Not obsessively. Not in a way that changed my outward behavior toward her. I acted completely normal. I went to the catering meeting with her. I approved the table linen colors without complaint. I sat across from the florist and said yes to the centerpiece arrangement she loved, even though it cost more than I'd originally planned. I did all of it exactly the way I would have done before that Tuesday night. But underneath all of it, I was watching. I was listening. I was cataloging details that I'd previously filed under no reason to question this. Claire's phone had started charging in the bathroom at night sometime around February. "I keep reaching for it out of habit, and it wakes me up," she told me when I noticed. Made complete sense at the time. Didn't make any sense now. She'd also been leaving earlier for what she called her Saturday yoga class. She'd been doing Saturday yoga for about 2 years, and I'd never paid much attention to the timing. It used to last about an hour and a half, sometimes 2. Now she was gone for 3 hours, sometimes 3.5, always with a perfectly reasonable explanation when she got back. The instructor had kept them for a workshop, brunch with some of the other women from the class, errands she'd been meaning to run. I counted the Saturdays going backward in my memory. 7 in a row. 7 Saturdays of 3+ hours. 7 separate explanations, each one seamless. Each one handed to me without hesitation. Each one now sitting completely differently in my memory. I want to be clear about something. I didn't hire anyone. I didn't go through her phone when she was asleep. I didn't install anything. Not because I was above it. Honestly, in those first few days after the hallway, I thought about it. But because I made a different decision. I was going to wait. I was going to let her show me. Because people who are managing a secret, who are keeping two separate tracks running simultaneously and believe they're completely safe. They get comfortable. Comfortable people get careless. And Claire had gotten very comfortable with the version of me she thought she was dealing with. The version that didn't ask too many questions. The version that paid the deposits and handled the vendors and trusted without verification. She wasn't wrong about that version. That version had existed. He just wasn't the one sitting across from her at dinner anymore. There were small moments in those weeks that I'd have to describe as strange. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because of how ordinary everything looked from the outside. We went to a tasting session for the wedding cake. 3 different flavors. We sat across from the baker and her assistant, and we tasted each one on little forks, and Claire said the lemon one was her favorite, but she'd be happy with whichever I preferred. I said the lemon was good. She squeezed my hand. The baker smiled at us. We walked out with a confirmed order. And the whole time, I was thinking about the sticky note inside the book on my nightstand. I was thinking about Victor waiting somewhere, patient, like she'd told him to be. I was thinking about the fact that the people in that bakery had no idea they were taking an order for a wedding that was not going to happen. That's the part nobody tells you about something like this. It's not one big dramatic moment. It's 100 small, ordinary moments where you have to be completely present on the surface and somewhere else entirely underneath. It is exhausting in a way that has no name. You eat the cake. You say the lemon is good. You walk out. You do not fall apart in the parking lot. About a week before I posted, I sat in Owen's car in the parking lot of a coffee shop for about an hour. We didn't go inside. We just sat there. He had the engine running for the heat. He said, at one point, "You can still do this differently. You can still just end it quietly and walk away." "I know," I said. "Is that what you want to do?" "No." A silence. "Why not?" he asked. Not like he was challenging me. Like he genuinely wanted to understand. I thought about it for a minute. "Because her version of this is already public," I said. 14 videos. 60,000 views on one of them. My family. Her family. Everyone has been watching her tell a story. And the story is about me. And it's not true. And I'm not going to be a character in a false story and then just quietly disappear when it's over. Owen nodded. Looked at the windshield. "Okay," he said. "Then we do it your way." He started the car. We drove back to his place. We ate sandwiches and watched something on TV and didn't talk about it again until I was ready. That's what a real friend looks like. 3 weeks after the hallway conversation, I got confirmation I hadn't even been looking for. Not from snooping. From Tessa. Tessa didn't plan to tell me. She didn't sit down somewhere and make a conscious decision to blow everything up. What happened was smaller than that, and somehow much more devastating. We ran into each other. Literally. In the parking lot of the grocery store closest to our apartment. She was coming out with 2 bags. I was going in. She saw me before I saw her, and I watched, in real time, the blood drain from her face. The moment she registered who I was, something happened in her expression that she couldn't quite get under control in time. It wasn't just guilt. It was something past guilt. Something that looked more like dread. "Hey," she said. "Hey, Tessa." There was a beat. The wrong kind of beat. The kind where someone's brain is running calculations at full speed and their face is showing every single one of them. "You doing okay?" I asked. "Yeah, of course." "You?" "Yeah. Just grabbing a few things." "Right, yeah. Me too." She gestured at her grocery bags like she needed to show me proof she had a reason to be there. "How are the wedding plans looking from your end?" I asked. "Last I heard you were still figuring out the bridesmaid situation." And that specific question, that completely ordinary question, was the one that broke her. She looked at me for half a second with an expression I will never be able to fully describe. Then she said, very quietly, "I'm so sorry." And she walked past me so fast she nearly dropped one of her bags. "I'm sorry." She didn't explain it. She didn't clarify. But she said it. And I stood there in the parking lot for a full 60 seconds after she disappeared around the corner. She knew. Tessa knew. Whatever was happening, whatever Claire was planning, Tessa was inside it. Close enough to know the details. Close enough to feel guilty. Close enough to apologize to me in a parking lot, and then flee because she couldn't stand to look at my face. I went home that night and sat alone in the guest room for an hour. Claire was out. Something about the wedding dress final fitting. She'd posted about it. Day 21, and the dress is perfect. I cried. 400 comments in the first 2 hours. Her mom left a row of heart emojis. My mom had reacted with a crying happy face. My aunt had written, "Can't wait to welcome you to the family, sweetheart." I read every single comment, and I started thinking about every person on that post. My family. Her family. People who had driven hours to come to our engagement party. People who had already sent wedding gifts, actual physical gifts, that were currently sitting in boxes stacked in the corner of our second bedroom. People who had booked flights, non-refundable flights. People who had taken time off from work. My parents had paid for the rehearsal dinner venue. My dad, who grew up without much, who treats every dollar as something that had to be earned twice, had written that check and handed it to me with a handshake and said, "She's a good one. Don't mess it up." He'd been talking to me. He should have been talking to her. I did the math. Carefully. Completely. Between my family's contributions, the gifts that had already arrived, and the deposits I'd personally handled, the venue, the photographer, the catering company, the florist, the rehearsal dinner space, we were looking at somewhere between $22,000 and $24,000 already committed, not including what her family had put in, not including what people had spent on flights and hotel rooms. And the wedding was still 3 weeks out. More contributions were coming. Her uncle had messaged me the previous week asking for the registry link because he wanted to get us something meaningful. More family on my side were flying in over the next 2 weeks. The gifts were going to keep arriving. The money was going to keep moving. And Claire was going to keep posting videos. I thought about what, after the ceremony, everything changes meant in practical, financial terms. And then I thought about what Victor's role in all of this actually was. And then I started thinking about something darker. Was the plan to go through with the actual ceremony? To stand at the altar, say the words, be photographed as a married couple, sign the papers, and then what? Stay a few days for appearances, and then leave? Disappear into a life she'd already been quietly building with someone else while I was approving floral arrangements and paying caterers? I don't know if that was the exact plan. I still don't know the complete shape of it, but I knew enough. I knew she was lying to my face every single day. I knew someone named Victor was waiting on the other end of whatever she was building. I knew Tessa felt guilty enough to apologize to me in a parking lot and flee. And I knew that in 21 days, a room was going to fill up with people who trusted both of us. I wasn't going to let that room fill up. I called Owen again that night. This time I wasn't asking for advice. I was telling him what I decided. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Are you sure?" "Yes. Because once you do this, you can't undo it." "I know. You're not going to get emotional halfway through and pull back." "No." A pause. "Okay," he said. "What do you need from me?" That's Owen. No drama. No additional questions once the decision was made. Just, what do you need? Here's what I need you to understand about the next 2 weeks. I was still there. Still in the apartment. Still sleeping in the same bed. Still having dinner with her every night. Still watching her post the countdown videos. Still nodding when she showed me comments and metrics and DMs from followers who said she was goals and that they'd never seen a bride so happy. Day 19 and the rehearsal schedule is locked in. Day 15 and I've never been more excited about anything in my entire life. Day 12 and I can't stop crying happy tears. I watched everyone. I liked a few of them. Her followers were going absolutely wild. The comment count on each video kept climbing. One of them hit 60,000 views after a regional wedding lifestyle account reposted it. And I want you to understand what it felt like to watch that happen in real time. Every time I watched one of those videos, I felt two things simultaneously. I felt the grief of it, because there had been a version of this that was real. There had been a time when I believed all of it completely, and that belief was not stupid or naive. It was built on 3 years of a relationship that I had genuinely lived. The late drives to nowhere. The way she'd fall asleep on the couch and I'd turn the TV off and cover her with the blanket. The weekend we drove up to the mountain and got completely lost and ended up eating gas station sandwiches in the car because everywhere was closed and we laughed about it for an hour. The night she called me crying because her grandmother had been moved into a care home and she didn't know how to process it. And I drove 40 minutes at 11 o'clock at night just to sit with her. All of that was real. That version of this was gone. And I grieved it quietly, in the background, while I planned what I was going to do. The second thing I felt was something much colder. Resolve. She thought she was in control of the story. She had the camera. She was the one posting and editing and curating and building a narrative for 14,000 followers and growing. She had absolutely no idea that I was about to introduce a second perspective. 10 days before the wedding, I created a new account. Separate from mine. Not anonymous. I wasn't hiding who I was, but separate. I spent about a week writing before I posted a single word. Not drafting casually. Writing carefully. I wanted every fact to be precise. I wanted every event to be placed in its correct order. I wanted the truth to be so clearly and cleanly stated that there was no interpretation needed, no gap that could be filled with a convenient alternative explanation. Owen read 3 drafts. He came over the second time, sat at my kitchen table, read the whole thing start to finish, put his phone face down, and looked at me. "This section here," he said. "You call her calculating and cold. Remove that. Just state what she did. The facts are damning enough without you editorializing." He was right. I took it out. "And here," he said, "you explain your feelings in too much detail. It makes it sound like you're asking for sympathy. You don't need sympathy. You need to be believed. Those are different." I revised it again. The goal was not to make people feel sorry for me. The goal was to make everyone who had been watching the countdown videos understand what they had actually been watching. For days before the wedding, something happened that I hadn't expected. It was a Friday evening. Rain coming down hard outside the way it does in late fall in this city, hitting the windows sideways. Claire sat down next to me on the couch, and she took my hand. She looked at me, really looked at me, the way she used to in the first year of us. And she said, "Are you happy?" I looked at her for a long second. I thought about all the different honest answers to that question. "Are you?" I asked instead. She smiled. That specific smile she had, the one that started at the corner of her mouth and took a half second to reach full size, the one I had once found completely disarming. "I'm the happiest I've ever been," she said. And she meant it. That's the part that hit hardest. She absolutely meant it. Not because she loved me, but because she was 4 days from the finish line of whatever she had built, and everything was going according to plan, and she was genuinely happy about that. Happy that it was working. Happy that I still didn't know. I nodded once. "Good," I said, and I turned back to the TV. And I thought about the post going up in approximately 72 hours. I need to go back briefly, because there's a piece of backstory I haven't told you yet. You needed to understand the full shape of what Claire was doing. About 8 months before I proposed, so roughly a year and a half into the relationship, we'd had what I would call the most significant argument of our time together. It wasn't dramatic. No raised voices. No things said in anger. But it was real, and it had weight. It was about money. She mentioned, casually, in the way you float something without fully committing to it, that she thought it made sense for us to fully combine finances after the wedding. One account. Everything together. I wasn't opposed to the concept, but I wanted to have the actual conversation because I had savings I'd spent years building, and I wanted to understand what fully combined actually meant in practice. When we sat down to talk about it properly, her specific ideas surprised me. Not just we combine, but how the accounts should be structured, who would manage what, where money would flow, who would have the final call on significant decisions. Every single one of her ideas centered her as the primary decision maker. I pushed back, carefully. She went quiet in the way she did when she'd wanted a specific answer and hadn't gotten it. A few days later, she said we could figure out the details closer to the wedding. I thought she'd let it go. But when I think about that conversation now, in the full context of everything I learned, it looks entirely different. She didn't let it go. She just found a different route to the same destination. One that involved a ceremony, a carefully managed exit, and a man named Victor who, I would later find out, had an apartment lined up. 3 days before the wedding, I drove to my parents' house. Just me. Claire thought I was handling some final details with a vendor who was closer to their neighborhood. I sat down at the kitchen table with my dad and told him everything. All of it. He listened without interrupting once, and I talked for probably 20 minutes straight. When I finished, there was a silence that lasted about half a minute. Then he said, "What do you need from me?" Not, "Are you absolutely sure about all this?" Not, "That's an incredibly serious accusation." Just, "What do you need?" I told him. He nodded once, picked up his coffee cup, looked out the window for a moment, then looked back at me. "You handle your end," he said. "I'll handle this end." I didn't know the full scope of what that meant. I found out over the next 2 days. My dad quietly, carefully, reached out to every family member on our side who had contributed money, sent a check, or booked travel. He didn't alarm anyone. He didn't tell the whole story. He simply told each person there was a situation developing and to hold on, to not do anything further until they heard directly from me. He made 14 phone calls in 48 hours. Not once did anything leak back to Claire. Not one person she spoke to during those 2 days mentioned it. 14 conversations, perfectly contained. That's my dad. 2 days before the wedding, Claire posted what would turn out to be her final countdown video. Day 2. I still can't believe this is real. I'm going to be someone's wife in 2 days. 800 comments in the first hour. Her dress was hanging in its garment bag on the back of the bedroom door. The venue had sent the final confirmed timeline. The photographer had sent a detailed day of schedule. The florist had confirmed the morning delivery. Everything was in place, including exactly what I was about to do. I posted at 7:14 a.m. on the morning before our wedding day. Not on my personal account, on the new one. But the post tagged every relevant account. The venue's page, the photographer, the catering company, and specific people. Her closest cousin who'd been posting countdown content of her own for weeks. My aunt who had cried at the engagement party. Owen, who already knew everything and had agreed to be tagged as someone who could speak to the accuracy of the timeline. The post was long. 9 days of writing and revising. It started with the date of the hallway conversation, the exact words I had heard, and a clear explanation of who Victor was and what Claire had previously told me about him. Then it described, in plain and precise language, what I had observed over the following weeks. Then it included the screenshot. Because here is the thing I haven't told you yet, the thing that made everything else airtight. 3 days before I posted, Tessa had messaged me. Not a call, a message. No preamble, no explanation first. She just sent me a screenshot and typed 3 sentences underneath it. The screenshot was a text exchange between her and Claire from 6 weeks earlier. In it, Claire wrote about the plan with complete clarity. He has an apartment lined up. After the wedding, I'm staying a few days for appearances, and then I'm telling him I need space to process, and I'll go stay with you. Then I'll just not come back. Not come back. She had written those exact words. After the wedding, after the gifts, after the deposits, after my parents' contribution and my father's handshake and his "she's a good one," after the rehearsal dinner venue they'd booked, after everything that had already moved and couldn't be taken back. And Tessa, who had held this information for 6 weeks, who had apparently told Claire multiple times it was wrong, who had finally broken in a grocery store parking lot 2 weeks earlier, had sent me the one piece of documentation that changed the whole picture. The 3 sentences she included were, "I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. Please do what you need to do. I'm sorry." I didn't respond to Tessa in that moment. There was nothing I needed to say to her right then. The screenshot went directly into the post I'd been building for 9 days. The post went live at 7:14 a.m. By 8 a.m., Claire's cousin had called her. By 8:30, 5 other people had messaged her directly. By 8:45, the comments on the post were moving faster than I could track. I was sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee when I heard her phone go off upstairs. Then go off again. Then again. Then her footsteps, fast, across the bedroom floor above me. Silence. Footsteps again. More silence. Then she came downstairs, still in her pajamas. Hair loose. Her face the color of someone who has had all the blood leave their body in about 4 seconds. She stood in the doorway of the kitchen and looked at me. And I looked at her. Neither of us said anything for a long moment. The coffee maker finished its cycle. She said, "You posted that." "I did," I said. "Why didn't you just talk to me? I want you to sit with that question for a moment. Why didn't you just talk to me?" She was asking why I hadn't come to her privately. Why I hadn't given her a chance to explain in person. Why I hadn't let it be a conversation between 2 people instead of something the entire extended network of our combined families and vendors was now reading in real time. I thought about it for exactly 1 second. "Because you weren't going to tell me the truth," I said. "You were going to tell me a story, and I was done being in your story." She opened her mouth. She closed it. She looked at the counter. She looked at the floor. She didn't have a response to that. Because it was exactly true and she knew it. And there was no version of this conversation where she could argue otherwise. I stood up, put my cup in the sink, and went upstairs to finish packing what I'd already started the night before. The next 6 hours were the closest thing to controlled chaos I have ever lived through. Her mother called me. I didn't answer. Her father called twice. I didn't answer. 3 of her bridesmaids texted. I didn't respond. Owen showed up at the apartment at around 10 o'clock, as planned. I had already finished packing what I needed. Not everything, just what mattered. We drove to his place without rushing. No dramatic exit. No final words in the doorway. Claire was in the living room when we left, on the phone, her voice low and tight, and trying to manage a situation that was completely past managing. I didn't say anything on the way out. I'd already said what needed to be said. 7 hours earlier. At 7:14 a.m. The wedding did not happen. The venue was notified by midday. The photographer, who had seen the post independently because she followed Claire's countdown series, reached out to me personally to confirm cancellation. She was professional and genuinely kind about it. The catering company required formal notice, which Owen helped me draft and send. My parents' contribution was returned to them in full. Claire's father handled that himself, apparently. I don't know what conversation he had with Claire about it. I was not present for any of it. The gifts that had arrived were sent back. My aunt, who had flown in from the opposite coast, sat in her hotel for one day, rebooked her flight, and went home. She texted me 3 weeks later. "I'm glad you found out before and not after. You're going to be fine." She was right. Before is survivable. After would have been something entirely different. Victor, I eventually pieced together, was someone Claire had never fully let go of. They'd broken up before we met. That part was true. But she'd kept a thin thread alive. Something so quiet and low I would never have noticed it unless I was specifically looking. And sometime after I proposed, when the permanence of what she was walking into started to feel real, she pulled that thread and Victor had answered. Whatever they'd rebuilt across the months of our engagement, I don't know the full texture of it. I don't need to. What I know is that she chose it over everything we'd built. And she chose to let me fund the exit. That's the part that's hardest to sit with. Not the betrayal itself. Betrayal, in some form, is something human beings are capable of, and I don't think you have to be a monster to make terrible choices. The hardest part was the patience of it. The cold, careful, sustainable patience. The countdown videos. The shimmy. The day 2 and I still can't believe this is real. All of it running in perfect parallel with the other plan. Both tracks moving simultaneously, right up until I derailed one of them. She had been managing 2 realities at the same time. And she had been doing it well. That's the thing I keep coming back to. She had been doing it well. People ask me, in comments, in messages, people I know and complete strangers, why I made it public. Why I didn't handle it privately between 2 people. Why I didn't just walk away quietly. And here's the honest answer. I made it public because she had already made it public. She had posted 14 countdown videos for 14,000 followers. She had built an entire audience around a story that was false. She had taken my family's money, my time, my complete trust, and packaged all of it into content for an audience that was celebrating it. 60,000 views. A repost from a wedding media account. Her aunts sharing it to their own pages. My mother reacting with a crying happy face. She had made our relationship public property. She had broadcast it. I decided the broadcast needed a correction. If she had been private about all of it, no social media, no videos, no followers celebrating something that wasn't real, maybe I handle it differently. Maybe I leave quietly and let it be a private ending. But she wasn't private. She was broadcasting. And I decided, if she got to tell the story, so did I. 2 weeks after the wedding that didn't happen, I got one message from Claire. Just one. It said, "I never wanted to hurt you. I know you won't believe that. But it's true." I read it once. I put my phone down. I didn't respond. Not because I was being cold, but because there was nothing in that message that opened any door worth walking through. I never wanted to hurt you. That's the sentence she chose. Not "I'm sorry." Not "I was wrong." Not "you deserved better than this." I never wanted to hurt you. Which is a statement about intent. Which is, functionally, a way of saying, the outcome is unfortunate, but the intention behind it was acceptable. It wasn't acceptable. Intent is not a currency you can trade against consequence. I didn't respond. I let the message sit there, unanswered, in a thread I eventually archived without opening again. Tessa messaged me separately. Her message was different. She apologized clearly, specifically, without any protective language around herself. She said she had known for 4 months. She said she had told Claire multiple times that what she was doing was wrong. She said Claire had told her she was handling it, and to trust her. She said the evening in the parking lot was the evening she made the decision to send me something, and that she just needed a few more days to actually do it. She apologized for those days. She said she understood completely if I never wanted to speak to her again. I thought about it for several days. Tessa isn't the villain here. She knew too much for too long without telling me, and that matters. But she also eventually broke. She sent me the one piece of documentation that transformed what I had, an overheard conversation, deniable, into what I needed. Claire's own words, written, time-stamped, not deniable. I told Tessa I appreciated the apology. I told her I needed time. I left it there. Owen made me eat real food for about 3 weeks after everything. That's the kind of friend he is. He'd show up with groceries, not to have a long, tearful conversation, not to process everything in painful detail, just to make sure I was eating actual meals and not running on coffee and whatever happened to be at the back of the cabinet. We'd cook something and watch TV and talk about other things. That was more useful than any amount of talking about what had happened. My dad called every other day, not with open-ended, "How are you doing?" questions, which I found difficult to answer without performing an answer. He'd call and say, "Did you sleep last night? And did you eat today? And did you go outside at all?" Specific. Answerable. Yeah. Yeah. For a walk this morning. Good, he'd say. Same time the day after tomorrow. And then he'd hang up. It sounds minimal. It wasn't. It was exactly the right amount. Claire's countdown videos are gone. She deleted all 14 of them within about 48 hours of the post going up. The account itself went private shortly after. I don't know what she posts now, or if she posts at all. I blocked the account sometime in the second month. Not in anger, just to close the loop. I still live in the Pacific Northwest. Same city, different apartment. I found a place about 20 minutes from Owens, which was intentional. I did not feel the need to leave the city. It hadn't done anything wrong. The rain is exactly as constant as it always was. I've made my peace with it. I kept the engagement ring for about 2 weeks after everything came apart. I'm not sure why. It sat on my dresser and I'd look at it and not decide. Then I decided. I sold it. I wasn't desperate for the money, but I didn't want it in a drawer, becoming something I pulled out whenever I cleaned and then had to put somewhere again. It was a very specific object that represented a very specific thing. That thing was over. I let it go. I used part of what I got to buy a proper kitchen table because the one I'd brought from the old apartment was wobbly and secondhand, and I'd always meant to replace it and never had. Now I have a good table. I eat breakfast at it every morning. I make coffee. I watch the rain hit the window at the angle it always hits this time of year. I read. I work. I exist in the apartment without any version of what almost happened haunting the corners. That took longer than 2 weeks. Longer than a month. But it happened. Small things matter more than people give them credit for. Here's the part I've thought about the most. Not the betrayal. Not the money. Not the logistics of unwinding something that had been 3 years in the making. The part one think about most is the hallway. That Tuesday night. The pasta. The ordinary before. I've replayed that evening 100 times, looking for something I should have caught earlier. Some warning that a smarter or more careful version of me would have acted on. And the honest answer is, I couldn't have known. Not before that hallway. There was nothing in the 3 years before that moment so glaring I should have changed course. She was warm. She was funny. She remembered the things that mattered to me. She showed up when I needed her to. None of that was entirely fake, I think. Or not from the beginning. I think she started with something real and made choices that slowly hollowed it out. I think the Claire who laughed at what I said before I'd finished saying it at that birthday dinner genuinely felt something. I think the Claire who started building an exit plan with Victor somewhere in the middle of our engagement had become something different. People contain multiples. They can be real and also wrong. They can mean it when they say it and still do something terrible afterward. That doesn't make the terrible thing okay, but it does make the grief more complicated. Because you're not grieving a fiction. You're grieving something that had real parts inside it. Real years. Real moments. Real mornings and late nights and small, ordinary things that actually happened. And that kind of grief doesn't resolve the way clean anger would. It just sits with you for a while. It gets quieter. It gets lighter. And then one morning you sit down at a kitchen table you bought with your own money and drink your coffee in the gray morning light and realize it wasn't the first thing you thought about when you woke up. And that's the ending. Not a revelation. Not a transformation. Just a morning where something is different and you notice and you move on. People in the comments of the post kept saying I should have confronted her directly first. Some said I was cruel. Some said I was cold-blooded. Some said I was calculated. They weren't wrong about the calculated part. But here's what I keep coming back to. She had 4 months of knowing exactly what she was doing. 4 months of planning. 4 months of posting videos and accepting gifts and standing next to me at venue walkthroughs and family dinners and cake tastings and sitting on the couch leaning into my side while I said nothing. 4 months of looking me in the face every single morning. She gave me 0 days. 0. She had arranged a complete life after me and left me with no knowledge of it. No option, no exit that belonged to me. So when people say I should have come to her privately, should have given her a chance to explain herself, should have kept it between 2 people, I understand why they feel that. I genuinely do. But I keep asking the same question. Why did only one of us have to be the private one? Why did the rules of decency apply to my exit and not to hers? Why was my responsibility to protect her from consequences she herself built and set into motion? I don't have a clean answer. I just know that when I posted at 7:14 a.m., I wasn't being cruel. I was being done. Done with the prop role. Done with her story. Done with being the quiet, trusting, bill-paying character in a performance that was never actually about me. I stepped out of her frame, and I said what was actually happening. That's all it was. She never posted another wedding countdown. I never posted another update about any of it. One post was enough. The truth doesn't need a series. And I don't need the last word. I just needed the true one.